So we're going to start out really dark, and then it's going to get weird, but we'll end on a sweet note. We're talking about my most anticipated reads for 2021. I really tried to narrow down the books that I'm most excited to read in 2021 to like 10 or 12, but it did not work out that way. So I don't know, grab some tea, a snack, maybe a blanket, and let's do this. Let's have fun. I did this for us. The first book is Mother May I by Joshua Jackson. Now picture this. You are Bree Cabot, and you have this beautiful family. You're married, you have 2 teenage daughters, you've just given birth to your son, and you wake up one morning, and when you look out of the window in your bedroom, there is this gray-haired woman clad in all black peering into your home. And you've just woken up, so like you blink, like, am I really seeing this? And then she's gone. So you tell yourself for the rest of the morning while you're getting the girls ready for school that it was just my imagination. But then you get to the school to drop your girls off and you see this woman again. Somehow you step away from your baby who's in your car just a few feet away from you. You turn away for a second, and when you turn back, the baby is gone. Your baby is gone. And in his place is a note that says, you're being watched. Don't contact the authorities. Further instructions will be coming. This woman who was peering into her window is clearly the person who kidnaps her son. She instructs Bree to do this one thing, this one little teeny little harmless little thing, and she'll get her son back. And so she does it. But whatever this thing is, it like just totally blows Bree's world apart. And apparently when Bree was younger, her mother would always tell her that the world is a dark and like scary place. And Bree never believed her mom. And so now, years later, after Bree feels like she's proven her mother wrong by creating this wonderful family, by having this beautiful home, this scary woman shows up in her life, and now Bree is probably, I'm guessing, going to realize that there was a much deeper meaning and secret and darkness behind what her mother warned her about. Then we have Survive the Night by Riley Sager, and this book takes place 30 years ago in 1991, and Charlie has decided to participate in this like ride share situation with this stranger named Josh, and they're both headed to Ohio. Charlie's in college, and she's actually going to Ohio for the funeral of her friend who was murdered by this serial killer called the Campus Killer. And so Charlie is with Josh, the stranger, and they are driving toward Ohio when Charlie starts to suspect that Josh is not only lying about his reasons for participating in this rideshare program. He says he's going home to take care of his ailing father, but she also starts to think that Josh is the campus killer. Josh is like very adamant that Charlie cannot look in his trunk. What does Josh have in his trunk? It matters that this story takes place in 1991 because there are like no cell phones and technology and things the way we have them now. And so the story just becomes this crazy cat and mouse that plays out in the night on open stretches of road. And there's talk in the synopsis about trying to get to a payphone and running around parking lots of convenience stores and gas stations along the way. Oh man, this just reminds me, this book, of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and other scary stories or movies that I would watch growing up. I also love a story that takes place within a very limited time frame and in close quarters. So the fact that Charlie and Josh are like stuck in this car together and all of this drama apparently takes place in one night, I just want to see how it all plays out. Charlie, honey, why are we accepting rides with strangers? Next is The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. Reverend Jack Brooks is a single parent, and he moves to this town to take over a church. And when he arrives, he receives the weirdest welcome package ever. An exorcism kit and a note that says, let me see if I can remember this. There is nothing covered up that will not be revealed, and hidden that will not be known. And possibly unbeknownst to Reverend Jack is that the vicar who managed the church before he arrived hanged himself. And then 30 years before that, 2 teenage girls in that town disappeared without a trace. And even before that, there was this history of like burning people at the stake. And so this town is just full of secrets. Everyone sort of knows something but isn't talking. And then at some point, Jack's own daughter starts to have these visions of girls being set on fire. Why do I do this to myself? Something about evil or, just suspense dealing with a church, and especially in a small town where there's clearly this history that has been like plaguing the town for years, and people still stay, but they don't want to talk about what it is. I need to know what's going on, what happened, and I hope Jack and his daughter make it through and they're okay. Next is We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. And this story takes place in this coastal California town where Walk, the new sheriff, grew up. And 30 plus years ago, Walk testified against his friend Vincent. And that testimony helped to send Vincent away to prison for 30 years. Since then, Walk has been trying to sort of protect and look after Vince's daughter, Duchess, and Duchess's mom, Star. But Star has a lot of problems, and Duchess is basically, she's I think 13 years old, and so she's basically been taking care of herself, taking care of her mother, and taking care of her younger brother. And just when they probably can't handle any new drama in their lives, Vincent is released from prison, but he brings just some trouble and some danger with him. I don't know what that danger is, but that's why I want to read this book. This idea of someone being released from prison and you are part of the reason. Well, I mean, if Vincent is guilty, then he's the reason that he went to prison. But just knowing that you gave testimony to help put this person away, and now they're out. And clearly Vincent has an axe to grind, whether he feels like he was innocent or is innocent and should not have spent the last 30 years of his life in prison, or whether he's simply resentful of his friend for being the person to give the testimony that sent him away. And so whatever drama, whatever trouble that Vincent brings with him once he's released, Walk is really up against it, trying to help Duchess, work through this, and Star work through this, and I'm sure trying to stay on the right side of the law at the same time. And if Walk did lie, or if he was somehow involved in whatever crime that Vincent has been the only one to spend time serving, that Vincent has been the only one to serve time for, then Walk's job could be, and his freedom could be, at stake. Next, we have Within These Wicked Walls by debut author Lauren Blackwood. And this book is described as an Ethiopian-inspired fantasy retelling of Jane Eyre, and I love a good retelling. The first line in the synopsis is, "What the heart desires, the house destroys." And the main character, Andromeda, is an exorcist, and her job in this fantasy world is to cleanse homes of the evil eye. This one job at a castle where she's supposed to perform this exorcism, or the owner of this castle is this handsome heir named Magnus, I believe. And so at the same time that Andromeda is like falling for Magnus, she also realizes that this whatever evil in this home is more than she is trained to handle. And so even though she feels that, you know, performing this exorcism could lead to her dying, could kill her, she cares so much for Magnus that she does it, or she tries, she attempts it. We'll find out whether she succeeds or not. And like I said, I'm excited about the retelling, but Andromeda girl, call for backup. Call for backup. Maybe refer Magnus to someone with some more experience. Give him your phone number and say, babe, if you make it through this, call me. But the next book that I'm excited to read is The Perfect Ruin by Shanora Williams. This is a thriller, and it features a woman named Ivy Hill who apparently had this wonderful life as a child until this tragedy struck her family. And all of a sudden, everything that she loved, it was ruined. And Ivy has this very troubled life, and when she becomes an adult, at some point, she runs into the woman that she blames for her entire childhood just being ruined. And this woman's name is Lola. And so Lola is wealthy, she's beautiful, she's well loved and adored in her community. And Ivy decides, you know what? You messed up my life, I'm going to mess up your life. Ivy proceeds to infiltrate Lola's life, and she somehow becomes Lola's closest friend. And then she starts to pick out people who Lola has around her but aren't really true friends, and turn these people against Lola. But then at some point, Ivy sets her sights on Lola's husband. And so I'm sure in the beginning she just thought, okay, I'm just gonna sleep with her husband and, ruin her happy marriage. But something happens. I don't know what. Somehow this desire that Ivy has for Lola's husband becomes her ruin. The synopsis says that shortly after Ivy begins to fall uncontrollably for Lola's husband, that an insidious someone turns Ivy's dream into a nightmare. But I'm thinking Ivy is the insidious someone in this equation. She's the one trying to ruin Lola's life and steal her husband and turn all of her so-called friends against her. The idea that you start with this revenge plot, and then somehow the revenge plot gets turned around on Ivy. I just want to know what happens. I need to know. This next book is written by an author that I've sort of been stalking for the past year, and that is Homestretch by Graham Norton. You may know that Graham Norton is the host of a show. It may even be called The Graham Norton Show. I've never watched the show. He is British, and somehow a couple years ago I came across two books that he's written several books, but I came across two novels that he'd written called The Keeper and Holding. And I just loved both of these books. Holding, though, features this detective, PJ Collins, and that book is just everything that I look for in a mystery. Deceptively cozy and just so good, so good, so addictive, and so good that, like I said, for the past year, I have been stalking Graham Norton's website, internet, everything to find out is holding the beginning of a series, which Graham or any of Graham's friends who may be watching, it should be a series. Give us more books featuring this detective, and I want to know what happens with him and this woman. Anyway, or just waiting for him to release anything else. And so I'll be open and honest that I've been so excited for a new book from Graham Norton that I don't even know what the synopsis is for this book, Homestretch. So I'm just going to read it. I trust him. I don't care what it's about. I'm going to read it. So I'll read it. It says, it is 1987 and a small Irish community is preparing for a wedding. Okay, so maybe Graham Norton is not British. Maybe he's Irish. I don't know. Let's see. We can look it up. Graham Norton. Because I possibly got this all wrong. He's an Irish television host. Okay, so he's not British. He's Irish. Excuse me. Okay, so it is 1987 and a small Irish community is preparing for a wedding. The day before the ceremony, a group of young friends, including the bride and groom, are involved in an accident. 3 survive, 3 are killed. The lives of the families are shattered and the rifts between them ripple throughout the small town. Connor survived, but living among the angry and the mourning is almost as hard as carrying the shame of having been the driver. He leaves the only place he knows for another life, taking his secrets with him. Traveling first to Liverpool, then London, he eventually makes a home of sorts for himself in New York, where he finds shelter and the possibility of forging a new life. But the secrets, the unspoken longings and regrets that have come to haunt those left behind will not be silenced. Before long, Connor will have to confront his past. A powerful and timely novel of emigration and return, Homestretch demonstrates Norton's keen understanding of the power of stigma and secrecy and their devastating effect on ordinary lives. Yes, yes, and absolutely yes. Both of the previous books that I read by Graham Norton, they featured these like really devastating secrets held by people who were otherwise like really ordinary. And he just, I don't know, compassion. He just unravels these secrets with such compassion for his characters. He never reduces his characters to the decisions that they've made. That's what it is for me. And I think that makes for such an honest and like endearing read. Again, Graham. Sequel, The Holding. Thank you. Sorry I mistook you for British. The next book is The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. So this book introduces us to Evelyn. And Evelyn learns that her husband is having an affair with this broad named Martine. Martine is everything that Evelyn is not. She's gentle, she's patient, and she's sleeping with Evelyn's husband. The catch, though, is that Martine is a genetically cloned replica of Evelyn. That Evelyn herself, I don't know if she created Martine, but Evelyn created the technology that created Martine. And then, as if that's not crazy enough, your clone sleeping with your husband, the husband ends up dead. And so we don't know if Evelyn did it, we don't know if Martine did it, or some third party did it, but now Evelyn has to clean up this mess that she's apparently created. This book gives me Black Mirror vibes. I don't know if you've seen that show. It's also now inspired a movie called Black Mirror. I think they're both streaming on Netflix. Black Mirror is speculative fiction, and it's really good. I've not seen the movie. I haven't even seen the entire series. I couldn't watch the entire series because it was too creepy. There's something about speculative fiction for me that can be even scarier than like a horror story, because they're imagining what our world could be like. And sometimes the difference between our world today and the world that's depicted in the story, it seems so very different. But for me, when the writer or the creator sort of closes that gap and shows me that, like, no, this looks very different from our world, but this reality is a lot closer to you, me, than I think. And that I can't handle that. So, but apparently I'm a glutton for punishment, because if this book reminds me of Black Mirror and I'm reading it, that's another story. But Black Mirror, just if you're interested, it's wild. I watched the first 3, maybe 4 episodes again. They were all good. I think it's a great show. I'm sure the movie is great. I just got to a point where I was like, if this is what's coming, I don't want to know. I'll just, I don't want to know. One of the episodes in Black Mirror was actually about this wife she was married, she had a daughter, and I think her husband died. And there was this technology where you could have your husband cloned or, reanimated. She did this. And it wasn't like I said, it wasn't like a horror film where, okay, you bring your husband back to life and now he tries to kill you and your kid. Like, I could have handled that. It was different from that, but it was like equally as tragic. And that's what this story makes me think about. So I'm really excited to read this and to see where Sarah takes this story. The next book is a psychological literary fiction novel, and it's the first novel by Zakiya Dalila Harris, and the book is called The Other Black Girl. This story is described as being part social commentary, part horror, and part psychological thriller. So the book stars Nella Rogers, who I'm assuming is the only Black employee at this publishing house. She's an editorial assistant, and the work environment is just very uncomfortable and unsafe for her. And then all of a sudden, this other Black woman named Hazel starts to work here. And now Nella feels, a little bit more comfortable, and, maybe she feels like she has someone she can relate to more, that she can talk to. Then there's this series of like really unfortunate, weird events. And after all the dust settles, Nella is even more of an outcast than she was before. And Hazel is elevated to being the office darling. That's what the synopsis says. And so in the aftermath of all of that, Nella starts to receive these notes telling her to leave the publishing house. And she believes that Hazel is the one leaving these notes for her. Or really, she doesn't want to believe it, but she can't imagine who else would be doing this, because she didn't receive any notes before Hazel's ass showed up, right? So then she starts to realize, though, as things continue to play out, that it's not just her job that's at stake. Like, there's something more sinister at play. So I'm thinking like, what is that movie with the rabbit in the pot? Fatal Attraction. And I don't know why it makes me think of Fatal Attraction or Single White Female. Just this idea of someone who's like obsessed with you and wants to get rid of you, wants to take your place. Whew. Okay, so we are officially halfway through this list. Are you still with me? The Lost Apothecary is a magical realism novel, and it is the first novel by Sarah Penner. And it features this, it has like a dual timeline, which aren't always my favorite, but we're gonna try this out. So back in 18th century London, there's this apothecary shop owned by a woman named Nella, and she specializes in creating these poisons that are like very skillfully disguised, and she sells these poisons to women who want to rid their lives of oppressive men. And one day she gives the poison to this 12-year-old girl, or I don't know if she gives the poison to the 12-year-old girl, but the 12-year-old uses the poison. And it sets off this like string of events that, you know, affect centuries to come. And so then in present day London, a woman named Caroline, who is a historian, she stumbles across this clue that will lead to solving these apothecary murders of, you know, the past. And so somehow in this novel, these two women are connected by this twist of fate, and not everyone will survive. This next book is also a debut novel, and it's called The Conductors by Nicole Glover. This is a historical fantasy, and this story is about Hetty and her husband Benji. During slavery, Hetty was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, and after emancipation, she and her husband live in Philadelphia, and they solve murders that the white authorities just dismiss, right? And then one day they discover the body of someone that they know, a friend of theirs. And when they start to investigate this murder, they learn all of these secrets about their town, about the people around them, and even about each other. I'm going to read the synopsis for this next story because it's so interesting that I'd rather just read it than try to explain my understanding of the story. And the next book is Pieces by Helen Oyeyemi. So it says, when Otto and Xavier Shin declare their love, an aunt gifts them a trip on a sleeper train to mark their new commitment. Not mark their new commitment, and to get them out of her house. Setting off with their pet mongoose, Otto and Xavier arrive at their sleepy local train station, but quickly deduce that the lucky day is no ordinary locomotive. Their trip on this former tea smuggling train has been curated beyond their wildest imaginations, complete with mysterious and welcoming touches like ingredients for their favorite breakfast. They seem to be the only people on board until Otto discovers a secretive woman who issues a surprising message. What's the message? We don't know. As further clues and questions pile up and the trip upends everything they thought they knew, Otto and Xavier begin to see connections to their own pasts, connections that now bind them together. A spellbinding tale from a star author, Pieces is about what it means to be seen by another person, whether it's your lover or a stranger on a train, and what happens when things you thought were firmly in the past turn out to be right beside you. This book, the synopsis really makes me think about Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, and who does not love Dame Christie? It also makes me think about A Pigeon Pie Mystery. What's the name of that author? A Pigeon Pie Mystery by Julia Stewart, which is a book that I have started reading so many times and I keep putting down, and I'm going to finish reading because it is a good book. Just with the crazy cast of characters and the oddity of it all. Can you imagine their aunt just gives them this train ticket to get them out of her hair? Is she somehow involved? Does she, know what's going to happen? I'm here for it. Next, we have Mrs. Wiggins by Mary Monroe. This story is set in Alabama, and the central character is Maggie Franklin. So Maggie had a tough upbringing. Her mother was a prostitute. Her father was an alcoholic. And she decides that the way for her to escape this life that she was sort of born into is to marry into a different life. And so she marries this preacher. I believe his name is Hubert. And he is able to give Mary, I guess, the social standing and the life that she's looking for. Now, Hubert, on the other hand, he overlooks Maggie's background because, I don't know if Maggie knows this, but Hubert has a secret of his own. And so slowly but surely, or maybe it doesn't take very long at all, Maggie and Hubert become like the most enviable couple in town. Did I mention Hubert is a preacher? He's a preacher. His father's a preacher too. So they've got preaching in the family. And so Maggie and her husband have a son. And eventually her son gets engaged. Now, when her son gets engaged, it's to a woman that Maggie knows is the worst possible person that he could ever have connected himself with. Who is this person? Probably someone from Maggie's past. We'll see. So then Maggie decides she has to fix this situation. Then Maggie's boss's brother starts harassing her, and so she needs to do something to fix that situation as well. But everything that Maggie does to try and fix and preserve this life that she's worked so hard to create for herself, everything she does to try to fix things makes things even worse or opens up doors to new issues. And so it's really a story about, I guess, like redemption. It's a story about preservation. You know, Maggie has created this life for herself, and now all of these different forces have come upon her and are threatening to strip everything away. And so I'm rooting for Maggie, and I don't know, is Maggie like what? I mean, she has to be a woman of gumption. I imagine she's a woman of gumption to have like created this life for herself. So is she like ruthless? I mean, she's a first lady of a church, right? So is she like going around breaking people's ankles with baseball bats? What is she doing to like preserve her life? I'm just interested to see the depths to which Maggie will reach in order to protect her life, protect her family, protect herself. You definitely get a gold star. You have just been hanging out. We've got 5 books to go, and these books, even though some of them still deal with murder, they're getting lighter and lighter and lighter. So this next book is the start of a series. It's also a debut novel for this author. It's called Dead Girls by Nekesa Afia, and this may be the mystery that I have been, or the mystery series that I have been waiting for. It features a Black protagonist named Louise Lloyd, and the series is set in Harlem in 1926. So Louise, as a teenager, survived a kidnapping attempt, and now she lives in Harlem, and she spends her days going between the cafe where she works and the speakeasy where she hangs out after hours. And then one day a Black woman, or a Black teenager, is found dead in front of the cafe where Louise works. And even before this happened, there were 2 other Black women who were murdered in a similar way in this town. And so when Louise starts to I think she gets agitated because the police are like ignoring the crime and not taking it seriously, and poor Louise ends up getting herself locked up, and the police give her an ultimatum: either she helps them to solve this case or she's going to sit in jail for a while. And then when Louise agrees to help, she ends up coming face to face with this evil mastermind, and now this person has their sights set on Louise as well. This next book is called Dow A for Aunties, and it's by Jessie Q Sutanto. Oh my gosh. So Madeline Chan, she is surrounded by meddlesome people, but that may be a good thing, because Madeline Chan has accidentally killed her blind date. And so her meddlesome mother finds out, and then gets her meddlesome aunties involved, and they try to dispose of this body and protect Madeline from, having to go to prison for an accident. Now, the family owns a wedding business, and somehow this body that they were supposed to dispose of gets shipped in a cooler to a destination wedding that the Chan women are coordinating. And so they are now on this island with this wedding that they're handling and this corpse. And to make things even crazier, Madeline's long lost love shows up. And so now she is tasked with pulling off this wedding without a hitch and properly disposing of this body so that she doesn't end up in prison, and somehow rekindling her romance with this person from her past. I don't need to say anything else. Moving on, Finlay Donovan is killing it, at least according to El Casimano, the author of this first book in a new mystery series. So Finlay is apparently a single mom, and her ex-husband is causing trouble for her because he's fired the nanny without saying anything to her about it. And then she is a novelist, but her novel is missing the deadline for completion. And so she's talking to her literary agent about the plot for this suspense novel that she's planning. And some numbskull nearby overhears this conversation and believes that Finlay is a contract killer. So this person somehow connects with Finlay and wants to hire her to kill their problem-prone or troublesome husband. I don't think that Finlay does it, but I'm imagining the husband ends up dead, and all of a sudden Finlay finds herself caught up in this murder mystery and probably needing to find out who did kill this person so that she doesn't take the rap for it. And there's also something in the synopsis about Finlay sending her child to school with hair duct taped to their head after an accident with scissors. And as a mother of 2 daughters, I know that can happen. So the second to last book on my list of most anticipated reads of 2021. I can't tell you how happy I am to finally be close to the end of this list. This next book is called This Close to Okay by Leesa Cross Smith. And the story features Tally and Emmett. This setup for this story is just whackadaisical for me. So Tally is a recently divorced therapist. She's driving home, and I believe she's crossing a bridge and sees Emmett, who she does not know, about to kill himself, about to jump off of this bridge. So like a good citizen, she stops, she helps him. But then Tally decides to invite Emmett to her home. This man that she does not know, that clearly has some serious issues. She should have driven him to a hospital, gotten him an Uber, take him home. I don't know. Take him to family, not home. He doesn't need to be alone, but he doesn't need to be in Tally's house either. Anyway, I'm being open-minded with it. I'm trying to be open-minded. So Tally takes Emmett home, and over the course of a weekend, they just somehow each become the thing that the other person desperately needs. So Tally does not tell Emmett that she's a therapist. She's keeping that as a secret from him. And then apparently Emmett has a secret as well. And Tally is going through something, so she's in need of, she has a void, or, she's in need of some healing in her life. Clearly, Emmett is in need of healing in his life. And so I am just so interested to know what these secrets are that these two people hold, and how do they come together on this weekend. And if I'm being honest, I want to know if they do it. Like, do you take somebody home that you don't know and this person was like about to kill themselves? Does it become a romance novel? A hookup novel? I don't know. So I have a feeling the story is going to be very uplifting, very endearing, but I just want to know, are they gonna, is that going to be part of it? We'll see. This last book, last but not least, because this list was not in any order, is definitely a romance novel, and it is called 7 Days in June, and it is written by Tia Williams. Now, the synopsis says that this story takes place in the middle of a steamy Brooklyn summer. I just love that for some reason. So the book features Eva and Shane. Eva is a single mom who is an erotica writer. Okay. She's attending this literary event in New York, and then this other author named Shane, he shows up at this event. Well, Eva and Shane connect. They fall for each other, and everyone's all in their business. What people don't know is that Eva and Shane knew each other before this event. They actually had a romance years before, and since then they have been secretly writing to each other in their books. Isn't that crazy? So now they're in the midst of this, rekindled flame, but there's apparently some trauma in both of their pasts, and there's this issue of Shane having broke Eva's heart the last time that they were together. She has a lot of questions that she wants him to answer. They're both going to work that through, and hopefully Well, it's a romance, so definitely by the end of the novel, they will be together. The fun is all in the roller coaster ride that gets them there. I don't know, just excited about that one. I hope you enjoyed this list. I want to hear which books you're most excited about. I can't decide for myself. Probably, well, I don't even know if it's Graham Norton. That's all, my darling.